Hello, and thank you for watching this video. My name is Chris Noll, and I am the Director of Student Services for the USC Department of Biomedical Engineering. I've created this presentation on networking to give you a basic overview of the benefits and process of this valuable tool. Networking can prove to be incredibly helpful as you go about the process of career exploration, as well as looking for that first internship or first job, and continuing on for your long-term professional development. Let's get started. Students that I talk with are often unsure what networking really means. They think it's a complicated process, or there must be something magic about it. But the truth is that networking is just having conversations. Essentially, it's finding professionals whose job you think you might be interested in and talking with them about this. This allows you to ask questions about their experience working in the industry, and it's also sometimes called informational interviews. The reason why it's stressed as informational interviews rather than job interviews is that because networking does not mean you're applying for a job and they're trying to decide if you're a right fit. In fact, the opposite is happening. You are interviewing someone who already has that job and trying to determine if that job is the right fit for you. There are some specific benefits to networking. It will increase your awareness of career options. As you talk to these working professionals, you may learn more about a particular industry than you knew before, or you may learn more about a particular role in the industry that you were unaware of. It also helps to learn about these professionals' experiences. As you move on in your professional development, it's helpful to understand what kind of issues you'll have to deal with as a working professional. And lastly, networking can enlist others in your job search process. You don't have to go it alone, and networking can really help create allies. Now that I've talked a little bit about some of the benefits, I want to talk about the actual process of conducting these informational interviews or getting started networking. The first step is to actually find the contacts. If you are unable to find contacts, you really can't get started. So the best thing to do for the contacts is to identify someone who's working in the field that you are considering. This doesn't mean that you're locked into this particular industry. This doesn't mean that this is the person that you're going to talk with. This doesn't mean that you even end up liking the person. But you want to start by figuring out who you might talk to ask some questions. I typically ask students to review their personal network and then the Trojan network. Let's take a look first at your personal network. This might involve friends and relatives, any type of organization in the community that you're involved with, and former employers. As you are preparing to network, it's a good idea to think back about these different organizations and ask yourself, is there anyone that I know that is working in the industry that I think I want to work in? If there is, that's fantastic. You have a built-in place to start. But if not, that's also okay. Being at USC means that you are part of the Trojan Network. There are a number of different sites within the Trojan Network that I want to talk about. One is professional student organizations. Most students on campus are involved with some type of student organization. BME, the Associated Students for Biomedical Engineering, is one of the best groups to be connected with. In addition, other students in your classes and your professors are also part of your Trojan network. And lastly, there is a BME alumni database that I'll talk about a little bit later that has resources if none of these others are options for you. Once you've taken a look at these or thought about the people that you know, hopefully you'll have an idea of a person to contact. So the next step is to actually contact that person. The best way to start that contact is email. I should point out that's not going to be the last part of the conversation. The conversation should move to in-person or on the phone, but email is probably the best way to start, particularly if it's a cold contact for someone you don't know personally. Once you've selected the person to contact, you might send them an email that looks something like this. a short statement to introduce yourself, and a little bit about who you are. A little bit more about how you contacted this person. For example, did you hear them speak at a meeting? Or, did you get their name from the BME alumni list? It's helpful so that they know it's not something completely out of the blue, but there is some kind of connection. After you've let them know who you are and how you thought to contact them, the last piece is to let them know what you were hoping to do. I like this sentence. Would you have time to talk with me about your experiences in the industry? Because it makes it clear that number one, you're not just asking this person for a job before they even know you. Number two, it doesn't say that you're looking to learn about whatever company they're part of. It's actually saying that you want to find out about that person's experiences. This is important for a couple reasons. If you send an email to an alumni who works at Medtronic, for example, and you say, I'd like to know more about Medtronic, they might just refer you to medtronic.com. Or if you send something to an alumni at Amgen, and you say, I'd like to learn more about finding jobs at Amgen, they'll send you to amgen.com/careers. But if you ask this person if they'd have time to talk about their experiences, there is no one else that can talk about their experiences. They are the expert on that. And again, it makes it clear that your hope is to have a conversation with them, not for them to hire you. That may result from this conversation, but the initial contact has to be very clear what you are looking for. You should then provide them with contact information so they know how to get in touch with you. The next step is to set up a time to actually go and talk with them. As I mentioned, the goal should not be to conduct a conversation with this professional by email. It's too time-consuming, and it doesn't allow you to make much of an impression. So it's best if you can be in person and on that person's work site. If it's not possible to work that out, for example, they are in another state and you're not able to travel there, or if you don't have a car and can't work out some kind of arrangement for a ride, then talking by phone is the second best step. But again, in person and on-site is really the best bet. I recommend business casual dress. If you don't know what that is, go ahead and Google it. There are lots of good guides online. But the basic idea is that you don't need to be in a business suit. You're not there for a job interview. But you need to dress as if you were already a working professional. No shorts, no jeans, something that would allow you to blend in at the workplace and allow the person you're talking with an opportunity to think of you as a professional rather than just a student. Your goal is to ask the person some questions. Again, this is an informational interview. Because you are not being interviewed for a job, the expectation is not that you will have to answer multiple questions. Instead, the idea is that you will ask the questions and your person you're talking to will provide the information. You may also wish to ask them for an office tour at the end of the conversation. This is another reason why it's better to be in person and at the work site, but I can talk a little bit more about that later. The next piece I want to talk about is the conversation you're going to have with this person. I have a list of questions that you can use. Keep in mind, this should be a natural conversation, or as natural as possible, considering you may not know this person. But the idea is that you start off with introductions. Particularly if you are working with someone from the BME alumni list, you may end up talking about some of the classes that you've taken, some of the professors that you had, how fantastic their advisor was, or you may end up talking about USC football, or the dorms that you lived in. A big part of informational interviews is gathering information, but the other piece of it is establishing a connection with a working professional. So don't be afraid to start off with introductions, and don't be concerned if it seems like you're spending too much time just getting to know each other. That's important. Once you move past that and starting asking questions about the professional experience, one of the best first questions is how they got started at their company, or how they got started in a particular industry. I think this is a very valuable first question, because it will give you a sense of how the rest of the conversation might go. For example, if you say, how did you get started at Edwards? And they start telling you a story, about how initially they were going to go to med school, but then they decided not to go to medical school, but then they realized Edwards had all these really cool projects, and then this happened, and then this happened, and it turns into a 5-minute story. Hopefully you're going to get some information out of it, but it's also going to be a clue to you that this person is very willing to share their information, and hopefully it will be a more easygoing conversation. You may talk to someone, and they say, well, Abbott came on campus and hired me for an internship. When I finished the internship, I was hired for a full-time job. That's how I started at Abbott. If that's the person's response, that's a clue to you that you're going to have to work pretty hard to keep this conversation going. So, some other questions you may want to think about asking are questions like, what are some of the projects you've worked on? This helps give you a sense of the broader picture. What is it really like to work at this company in this particular role? Another question that's helpful to ask is, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? I frequently talk to students who think biomedical engineering is all working in a lab, or all trying to do sales, or all trying to do something else. And in most cases, biomedical engineering is a mix of projects and a mix of tasks. But it's helpful for you to hear that from someone who's currently working in industry. Some additional questions you can think about is to ask them what they enjoy most about their job, or what they enjoy least about their job. This question is helpful because as the person is describing what they enjoy the most, it might resonate with you, and you might say, this sounds like a fantastic job for me. Or you might think, oh my God, I could never do what this person does. And that allows you to focus in a little bit more on the types of things that you do like. Another question to ask is what skills are needed to succeed in the field. They might list some very specific technical skills, which you may think about picking up on your own or trying to find a class that teaches it. Or they may mention some soft skills, like presentation skills or interpersonal communications. Whatever it is that they talk about, it gives you something to think about in terms of your preparations for professional life. You can also ask, what do you wish you would have known before getting this position? The answer to this question might surprise you. I should point out that the idea behind these questions is not to sit there and take notes with everything this person says, but instead it's keeping these questions in mind that will help the conversation move along smoothly. Because one of the things that determines whether or not you get hired is often not specific technical skills, but whether or not someone could actually work with you as part of a team. And some of that involves whether or not you can carry on a conversation with them. So again, my recommendation is not that you take notes as if they're a professor lecturing you, but to have these stashed away inside a portfolio. And if you need to peek at it, you can peek at it. If they say something you think that's really important, stop them and say, do you mind if I write that down? I really want to be sure I remember that. And that lets you know that you are listening to them, you're paying attention to them, and that they've said something really cool. The last few questions I want to talk about are what I call strategic questions. So if you are there visiting with the person at their work site, you can ask them if they have time to show you around. They might say no, but if they say yes, that will give you a better chance to understand what it's like to work there. Do people seem to be remarkably stressed? Is everyone working in cubicles? Do people have private offices with all the doors shut? Is there a level of tension that's there? How big is the company? There are companies that work in warehouses with 10 people. There are companies that have entire campuses with cafeterias and basketball courts. When you get shown around, you'll have a better idea of what that is. In addition, being shown around can be helpful because then you'll have a chance to meet other employees, including managers and professionals who work in other parts of the company. If the person showing around introduces you to someone, and from what their job title is, you think that sounds interesting, you might ask for their business card and ask if they'd be willing to have a conversation with you. And then you just did some more networking. So one more strategic question I also want to mention. Can you recommend anyone else that I should talk to? I feel like this is a valuable question because it allows you to expand your network. If you think about talking to one person, that's great, and that gives you an understanding of that particular person's job at that particular person's company. That's a good start. But the idea in creating a network is having multiple people that you've talked to. So if you talk to one person, and he gives you 2 more people to talk to. And then you talk to those 2 people, and one of them, she gives you another 3 people to talk to. Then you're building that network and you're expanding your knowledge not just of one particular company or one particular role, but multiple companies and multiple roles. So this last strategic question is really the way to start to build your network. Again, with all of these questions, it's not critical to ask any particular one of them, but I feel like this will give you a good sense of how you might want to structure the conversation to make sure that you get something out of it in terms of professional understanding. At the same time, if you talk to someone and end up spending the whole time talking about none of these professional things, because it turns out you're from the same hometown, you had a favorite math teacher, you were both in marching band, both lived in the same dorm, you know what, that's fine as well. But what you want to do is follow up with an email that says, I realized we spent so much time getting to know each other, I never had a chance to ask you about this, and then set up another conversation. Again, it goes back to that idea of networking and informational interviews are really just having conversations. Okay, so the last step is the follow-up. You should always send a thank you note. Even if your conversation with this professional was the most awkward, stilted, worst conversation you ever remember having, you should always send a thank you note. It can say nothing more than, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I really appreciated hearing your perspective on the company, the project, something specific that this person talked about. But you should always send a thank you note. If they did provide you with contacts, you should always follow up to expand your network. And then if you're keeping track, I've had students who have had Excel sheets where they will actually mark the name of the company, the person they talked to, and when they talked to them. It's up to you exactly how you keep track of these things. So once you have a sense of how the informational interview will go, I want to talk briefly about how to find contacts. I talked a little bit about the process, so if you already know someone, you're in good shape. If not, and you're a BME student here at USC, we have created an alumni database that has information of graduates who volunteered to provide their information. So I'm not going to provide the login information for it, but if you go here, you can see the website listed on the screen, and then send me an email, I can provide the login information for that. I can't stress the importance of networking. It's not exactly a job search method because it doesn't involve sending your resume in for a specific job posting. But the information that you're going to gain will be incredibly valuable, and in many cases, it will lead to job offers. But again, when you start off with informational interviews, you need to focus on asking questions and gathering information. I had assigned this as a project in a class that I guest lectured, and so I just want to share comments from 3 of the students who actually conducted these types of networking interviews. So the first one actually started to understand how useful it was. Another one said it was helpful and surprisingly enjoyable, and I really think it is. Talking to people you don't know is hardly anybody's favorite thing, but understanding this and following these steps can make it much more manageable. I appreciate the fact that this student felt like it gave him courage to go out there. The job search process is hard, but starting it by conducting informational interviews or networking with people that are out there and want you to succeed is an easier way to break into these kinds of conversations. So good luck. Again, my email address. I look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for listening.